Well, hi there. We are doing a extra broadcast for our Moving Beyond Challenge, and I'm so excited because I have some things to talk to you about the power of choice. So you know the drill. Say hi to me so I know we're live because I have so much to share with you. After our last Facebook Live, when we talked about external, internal kind of stuff, all kinds of thoughts came to my mind that I wanted to share with you. So scheduled another Facebook Live for this morning. Hope we have a good audience. And I want to share with you why it's so important that you do your internal work so that you can manage your external stressors or external relationships or whatever is going on. Jennifer, thank you for coming over here. Really appreciate you showing up. I know you were on the other one, so thanks. We'll wait and see if there's some other people. I think sometimes there's a little lag over on the other Facebook page. So see you, Ann. So glad you're here. Hi. We are going to talk about the power of choice. The power, and we're going to actually do an exercise that I hope will give you an experience of what it feels like to choose something different in the midst of a stressful episode. Okay, so let me just put this down here. So if you haven't signed up for the Moving Beyond Challenge yet, please do that because we want to make sure that everybody knows where to go. If you're a Conquer girl and you were just on the video that we just did, don't use this link or you will have to pay $17. Just this link is for the general public who may be on this Facebook page. Hi, Vicki. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Julie. So glad you're here. So today we're going to talk about the power of choice. The power of choice. When I say those words, the power of choice, what does that mean to you? What does it mean to you to have the power to choose? And do you personally feel like you have the power to choose yes or no? I can choose a yes when I want to say yes, and I can say a no when I want to say no. What does the power of choice mean to you? And can you exercise that in your life, with your relationships, at work, at home, with your kids, with your husband, with your pastor? Are you able to say no? What does that sound like for you? The power of choice. Anybody share? Anybody want to share what that feels like or what it says to you? The power of choice. What does that say to you? How does that resonate inside for you? Any thoughts? As you're busy typing away? You know, one of the worst feelings that a person would have in this world is a helpless feeling, right? That you have no choice, that you are powerless and helpless. And this is so crucial when you are in a situation. So yesterday we talked about having the external world not working out the way you want to. Like, I'm powerless to change the airplane industry. I'm powerless to get my pilot to fly the plane. I'm powerless to get the airport to get me on an airplane that I want to get on. I'm really powerless. And that's a horrible feeling. Okay, so we've gotten some feedback. Julie says, I can say no. That's the power of choice. I'm not held captive by people pleasing, that we are not powerless to make choices. Yeah. So this is really important because sometimes we do feel powerless here, and we are. Now, sometimes we're not, but we feel that way. But sometimes we are powerless. Like, you're really powerless to change another person, right? You don't have any ability even to change a 2-year-old, right? If they're throwing a fit publicly in the restaurant and you say to them, calm down, and they don't, and they just escalate their fit, and start kicking and screaming and throwing their food on the floor, you're powerless to stop that until they decide to stop, right? I mean, you can take them out of the restaurant, you can put them in the car, you can do all kinds of soothing things, but it's only until they decide to calm down do they calm down, right? And so you can be a good mom in that moment, or you can be a frustrated, angry mom in that moment. But either way, your kid's going to decide when they decide to calm down, right? And so this is really important. Yeah, I can respond to difficult situations to my core values rather than my emotions in the moment. That's powerful, isn't it? That's powerful. Jennifer says, I have the power to choose whatever I want because I'm in an amazing 44-year-old marriage with a godly man. I watch your teachings to share with others. I know who don't have that and need help understanding what's happening to them in their marriage. Yeah. And you know, people who aren't in an amazing marriage, Jennifer, also need to learn to have the power to choose, right? They may not be able to choose to fix someone else, but they do have the power to choose how they're going to show up in that moment and whether or not they're going to stay in that place, right? And stay trying to fix that situation, or that they've decided that they've done all they can do to fix that situation and it's not fixable and they have to get safe or get in a place where they're more valued in a relationship. So let's talk. I'm going to share a story and then we're going to do a little exercise because it sounds like all of you understand the power of choice, but I want to talk about this internal choice a little bit. So I was working with a mom who had recently gotten divorced. So her external world was stressful, to say the least. She had 3 littles and her husband wigged off and left her for another woman, didn't pay child support, didn't see the children, just kind of left the family. He just abandoned her, okay? So she's got her external world is now, I've got 3 littles, I've got to work full time to pay for the things. I've got to take care of these kids all by myself. She didn't live in an area where she had family support. And she was feeling a bit overwhelmed, right? Externally. How many of you could relate to that? I would feel overwhelmed if I had 3 littles and had to work full time and had to manage that on my own. That's a lot. That's a lot. So that was her external world. Her internal world was, I have nothing left for me. I have to take care of these kids. I have to bathe them. I have to do their homework. I have to work full time. I have to pay the bills. I have no support. It's all on me. I have nothing, for me. Okay, so she was struggling with those negative thoughts in her internal world. And her internal world was saying, I have no choice. This is what I have to do. I have to get up every morning. I have to take care of these 3 kids. I have to give them baths. I have to feed them. I have to, do all this stuff. And I was saying, no, you don't. No, you don't. You've lost sight of your power to choose. She looked at me like, what do you mean? And I said, you don't have to work. Plenty of people don't. You could go on welfare, get food stamps. In fact, if it's a burden, you could put your kids in foster care, give them up for adoption. There's probably people who would love to take care of them. You don't have to give them a bath or even feed them. Lots of parents don't. She looked at me like I was losing my mind, right? And you probably are thinking that too, like, what? I wouldn't do that. Of course she wouldn't, because that's not who she is. But do you hear the language difference? I have to do this versus I choose to do this because this is the kind of parent and person I am. It's powerfully different to feel like you have no choice and this is your lot in life and you just have to do all this versus saying, hey, I want to show up as a good person, as a good parent, as a responsible breadwinner. And I don't like the situation I'm in, but I have power to choose. I don't have to show up this way. I choose to show up this way. I want to be a good mother. I want to provide for my children. I want to feed them. Not I have to feed them. I want to feed them. I want to be a good mother. It's hard. It's hard to do this all by myself. But do you hear the shift when I have to versus I get to? I have to do this versus I get to. When I get to, that's a choice. I choose to be the kind of person who does this versus I default and I have no choice. And then I get resentful and I get bitter, not just tired, because sometimes you show up in the way you want to show up and you're just tired and it's okay because you showed up full out as a good mom, as a good spouse, as a good person. And maybe the results aren't turning out the way you want to, but you still feel like you gave it your all. That's different. That's a different internal feeling. It's a powerful feeling than for you to just say, I have to do all this and I have no choices. You don't. You don't. There's plenty of people who just lay around all day and do nothing. I can't imagine that they feel good about themselves, but they do it. There's people who don't work. There's people who, I'm not saying people who can't work. I'm saying people who choose not to work, who choose to live off the system, who choose to not take care of their children and keep having them. And I'm not judging that as but I'm just saying they make choices too. And this woman was making good choices, but she gave herself no credit because she put it in the have to category. I have to do this. No, you don't. No, you don't. And so when you reclaim your power to choose, you then start to feel more power not powerful over others, but powerful in yourself, that you are a self who has choices to make, and you can make good ones and you can make bad ones. We all do. You can make healthy ones and you can make unhealthy ones, but who's responsible for that? You are. So take the credit when you're making good choices and make the corrections when you're making bad choices. Don't just blame external. Well, the reason I did this, the reason I lost my temper at the airport was because they couldn't rebook my flight. I saw that all day on Tuesday. No, I have choices about how I'm going to handle that situation. And this is what we talk about so much in our groups. And sometimes I get a little flack because I'm not honoring the suffering that someone went through. And I'm honoring the suffering for sure. Our external world is tough. People get cancer, people get divorced, people get cheated on, people get lied to, people get raped and robbed, and drunk driving hits their child and kills them. Our external world, you don't have enough money to pay for gas, all the kinds of stuff that's going on right now. It's hard, it's scary. But let me read to you a quote from Viktor Frankl, who is one of my heroes from World War II. He was a Jewish psychiatrist who went through the Holocaust and, in the Nazi concentration camp, saw tons of his fellow Jews murdered by Hitler's regime. And yet, here's this horrible, horrible, horrible atrocity happening. And he's in the midst of it. And he writes a book later called Man's Search for Meaning. Like, why? And this is what he wrote. When you are no longer able to change a situation, whether it's, I'm not able to change the Holocaust, I'm not able to change the Nazis, I'm not able to change whether or not I'm in a concentration camp right now. He's not saying don't try to change it, but if you've tried to change things and you're up against a wall, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That's the internal work that we must do, because that gives us our power back. There's something we can do. We can choose to change ourselves. And so what is it that you need to change in order to be the person that you want to be in the environment that you find yourself in right now? Maybe you're in a tough marriage. Maybe you're in a tough job situation. Maybe you're feeling very lonely, or you're struggling and you're just kind of giving into all those emotions without taking charge of yourself. And so I would challenge you to join our Moving Beyond Challenge. I have the link here. You can join it. We are going to conquer and talk about these internal challenges when our external world feels overwhelming, or when we've tried to change this and it's not changing. Your marriage isn't changing, your boss isn't changing, your kids aren't changing, the world isn't changing. And what do you do in here? Do you just give up in despair, or do you fly off the handle in anger? Every day I read that in the news. People are flying off the handle in anger at someone who's not driving fast enough, who looks a different race, who doesn't act the way they want them to act, and they're flipping out and harming people and shooting people and doing all kinds of things because life isn't going the way they want it to go. Friend, we need work inside. It's not about creating a perfect environment. It's never going to happen. And so we need to learn how to manage these things. And so next week, I'm going to be doing 5 days of 1 hour coaching around different topics. One of my staff coaches and me are going to be on Facebook Live every single day for an hour, but you have to join to be a part of that group, because it's going to be a private group on Facebook. It's not going to be this page. It's going to be a Moving Beyond page so that we can have privacy and honesty without worrying about other people watching our feed. Okay, this is a public page, so be careful here. And so I want to invite you to join this challenge. Monday, we're going to be talking about moving beyond overwhelm. How many of you are feeling the world is pretty overwhelming right now? Financially, politically, our churches are a mess. We're getting a little overwhelmed in our marriages with our own problems. How do we deal with that internally? How do we do what Viktor Frankl says when we are no longer able to change a situation? We can't get the gas prices down. We can't make more money than we're making, all right? Then how do we challenge to grow ourselves? So the first day is moving beyond overwhelm. We're going to give you an email on Monday morning. You're going to get some help on how to handle overwhelm, what to do. We're going to ask you to start putting that into practice right away on Monday, put it into action steps. hop on our Facebook page at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're going to be with you for an hour at least to talk about how you handled overwhelm today. What did you do different? Did you practice some of these steps? Where did you get stuck? How can we help you deal with overwhelm? How did you work on your internal world in the light of overwhelm? The next day, Tuesday, we're going to talk about moving beyond negative thinking and bad moods. Because when this is going downhill, we think negative and we have bad moods. We just do. I do too. And I had to fight that at the airport on Tuesday. I have to fight that at certain times. So how do you fight that? Well, I'm going to show you one little tool today that we can talk about that. But we're going to learn how to do that. First, how do you even recognize that you're thinking negative? Do you recognize you're stinking thinking? Do you recognize that you're telling yourself stories about the external world? Like, let me just give you an example. And I'll give you the power of choice. I'm going to be very vulnerable here. Okay. I was having a prayer time in my office, and my husband, Howard, is a kind, wonderful man, but he tends to be a little loud at everything he does. He stirs his coffee, like all that kind of stuff. So that's my external world. No big deals, but I could tend to be irritable about that because I'm telling myself negative thoughts like, why is he so loud? And does he know I'm praying right now? And I'm trying to meditate, and all I'm hearing is him walking and clanging and banging. So I'm having a bunch of negative thoughts, right? What do you do with that? Do you even recognize you're having negative thoughts? So what did I do in that moment? I recognized I was having negative thoughts. And because I was having all these negative thoughts, it wasn't doing much for my prayer time. And I was feeling kind of irritable inside. I knew that my body was tensing. I was starting to get cranky, right? So what do? This is the temptation. The temptation is to say, can't you be quiet? Don't you know I'm praying? How's that sound? Not too good, right? We try to fix our person who's irritating us instead of fixing ourselves. So here's what I did in that moment. I started thanking God for my husband. Thank you that I have a good man who's never cheated on me that I know of. Thank you that he's kind, that he makes my tea in the morning. Thank you. And I started just switch the channel from everything he was doing that was irritating me to letting that go and saying, you know what? We're getting older now. Probably when he dies, I will miss that clanging coffee cup. I will miss that. And as soon as I switched the channel up here, guess what? All the irritation that I was feeling in that moment went away because I wasn't feeding it with my negative thoughts. That's the power of choice. I had a choice in that moment. I'm sitting still. Am I going to choose to focus on what he's doing that's aggravating me? And then maybe make a little fight between us because I'm going to criticize him? Or am I going to change me? I have a choice. I have a choice. And I made that choice. And I felt better that I didn't need to say anything to him. I had another incident like that in church where a mom's kids were all noisy behind me. And I was thinking to myself, why doesn't she settle them down? And then I switched the channel to, thank God she brought her kids here as a single mom. And she's trying to listen too, and kids are kids. And as soon as I changed the channel to my thought life, I didn't feel irritable. I felt grateful that she was there. Power of choice. I have a choice about how I'm going to talk to myself. I have a choice about how I'm going to look at this situation. That power to choose transforms your internal world. And then you show up in your external world differently, because after church, I turned around and I greeted her. I didn't give her a dirty look, which I've been known to do before in my younger, immature days, right? So this is the power of choice. And so Tuesday, we're going to be talking about that negative thoughts and feelings and how do we manage those? How do we recognize those? How do we recognize that we're telling ourselves a story that's getting ourselves all worked up that we don't have to tell? That Facebook Live will be at noon Eastern Time. Wednesday, we're going to be talking about how to move beyond the fear of failure. We all have things that God's calling us to do that we're kind of afraid to step into sometimes. Maybe it's just your no. Like, what if I say no and I mess up a relationship because they're mad at me? What if I say no and someone rejects me? I'm afraid of failing. Girlfriend, this is a huge topic, and we're going to talk about this and help you work through your fear of failure so you're not limiting yourself by this unrealistic fear that you have of failure, because you're telling yourself a story about failure that's not true. Like, oh, if I fail, this means I did it wrong. Maybe not. Maybe you did it absolutely right. But it doesn't mean everything's going to turn out the way you want. And so we need to Look at that and move beyond that. Thursday, we're going to talk about unrealistic expectations. Like, we expect life to be easy. We expect life to be fair. We expect people to be decent. And when that happens to not be true, which is more often than not, how do we handle that? Do we keep knocking our head against the wall, thinking that they're going to change? Or do we accept reality? And then Friday, moving beyond people pleasing. It doesn't mean that you're going to move from a giver to a taker. It means that you're going to learn how to give, and you're going to learn to say no when you want to or need to. So each of those days, we're going to have a Facebook. You're going to have an email. Let me repeat the Facebook times again. Monday is going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Tuesday is going to be at noon Eastern time. Wednesday is going to be 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Thursday is going to be noon Eastern time, and Friday is going to be noon Eastern time. All of them will be recorded. So if you can't be there live, you can hop on the Moving Beyond Facebook page and watch it. Not live, you won't have your questions answered per se, but if you submit them ahead of time, or if you let us know you're not going to be there and put that on the Facebook page, I'll have my staff try to capture those questions so that we can answer them. But you will get a ton of value for this 5-hour investment of your time watching the Facebook Lives, practicing the skills and the tools that I'm going to give you, and then really seeing and noticing what other people are doing, because we learn a lot just by watching others and hearing in the feed how they began to tackle overwhelm or how they recognize their negative thoughts. And we can do this together as a community of women who want to grow strong and be healthy and have a jump start in the second half of 2022. So I'm going to invite you to do an exercise with me that I just want to see if you can see your power to choose, okay? So I'd like you just to close your eyes for a minute. We're just going to kind of take a risk. I hope you can do this. So I just want you to close your eyes. And I don't know what's going on in your external world, but you do. You know what's going on in your external world, and you know how it's affecting you. Maybe your husband's cheating on you. Maybe your kid's on drugs. Maybe your finances are a mess because your credit cards are being jacked up with gas prices. Maybe your pastor is not hearing you when you're talking to him about your marriage and you need some help and you're desperate for support and no one's there to support you. I don't know what's going on in your external world, but I know that people are hurting. You're hurting. So I want you to pick one thing that's going on in your external world that you don't feel you're handling very well. Right? That you don't feel like you're handling it very well internally. You're sad, you're angry, you're bitter, you're resentful, you're reactive, you're impatient, whatever it is. Get in touch with that. Begin to notice the negative things that you say about the situation or yourself. I'm no good, I'm not enough, I'm not smart enough to fix this. He's a jerk. Why does he do this to me? Whatever it is, we all have these thoughts. And one of the things you'll learn about me is I'm just going to tell it like it is. I'm just going to be real with you guys, because I think we don't have enough honest people who are telling that they are struggling with the same things you are. And sort of you feel like, what's wrong with me? Nothing. This is what we struggle with. And we have to learn how to struggle well and how to help each other. Right? So you've got it now. You know what you're aggravated with or upset with. You know the external situation. So I want you to ask yourself a question. How would I like to show up? Why is it important for me to learn how to manage my internal world? Why is it important for me to learn to manage my internal world so my external world doesn't get the best of me? Why is it important for me to learn to manage my internal world so that my external world doesn't get the best of me? And so now what I want you to do is you got your why. So once you've got your why, it makes your how so much easier. Why is it important for you to learn? Because you don't want to show up in the way that you're showing up to your kids, to yourself. You go to bed at night embarrassed or ashamed or angry or resentful. So why is it important for you to learn to manage your internal world so that you can be the person that God calls you to be? So that you can grow into this person, even when your external world is so stressful. This is what Viktor Frankl says. When we can no longer change our external world, we are challenged to change ourselves. So one antidote, it's not the only antidote, but one antidote to the external world going south is gratitude. So right now, I want you to change the channel from everything that's going wrong in your life to not pick the diamonds out of your life. I don't want you to do that. I want you to pick the diamonds out of the dirt. What could you be thankful for or in the dirt? So let me give you an example. I worked with a woman whose son, her only child, was killed in a motorcycle accident. That's her external world. She can't change that. And she was overwhelmed with why and grief and anger at God and all those kind of things. Of course. And so when I asked her to pick out one thing that's a diamond in all of this mess, she said, I'm grateful that he's in heaven with Jesus. I'm grateful that he didn't suffer. He died fast. I'm grateful that my friends are with me during this time. The power to change your thoughts about a situation is life-giving. You can do that. Only you can do that. And as she began to focus on that, it's not that her grief went away, but her grief was held by something stronger. And it helped her show up in her grief in a way that she wanted to. This is the power you have internally. And we want to help you in this week's challenge to harness that more specifically about these different things so that you practice every day, learning how to do this so that you can do this on your own, weeks after that. Or if you're so inclined, we have some deeper work if you want to join a class of coaching that we're going to offer at the end of the challenge. I'll just be upfront with that. But some people need it and some people don't. But we want to give you real value, just like now, of what does it feel like to be able to change channel from being angry and looking at everything bad, and life is bad at times, to saying, what about that can I find that's one piece of good? One thing that I can be grateful for. That's powerful. To be able to do that and to do it so that your emotions can find something else to focus on. What was that like for you? What was that like for you as you did that? Did you start to begin to see the power of choice? Barb said, Leslie, your teaching changed my life. 3 years ago, I was an emotional mess. I made changes step by step, slowly with determination. I am a totally new place with hope and joy. I'm so glad to hear that, Barb. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, it starts Monday. The challenge starts Monday. So we want you all there. We don't want you to miss it. It's going to be powerful, and each skill builds on each other. So overwhelm then leads to negative thoughts and feelings, right? And negative thoughts and feelings lead to a fear of failure specifically. And a fear of failure leads to having unrealistic expectations of yourself, like I should never fail. I should always do everything right. I should never mess up, right? Do you hear those shoulds? I say stop shoulding on yourself, right? Because those expectations are a bunch of shoulds. Life should be like easy and fair, right? And so we're going to be talking about all the shoulds that we have in our head. But if you don't know how to recognize your negative thoughts, you won't even catch those shoulds because you'll just think it's normal. No, it's a negative way of thinking about yourself or about life. And then Friday, moving beyond people pleasing. This is a very rich challenge. It really is. It's one woman said last year, the $17 she spent was the best $17 she ever spent in her entire life. I mean, $17 is nothing really. It's a cup, not even, much gas anymore. 3 gallons of gas or a couple cups of coffee, but it can be a life-changing week for you if you invest in yourself. It's much more costly in time than it is in money. And it's not that costly. 1 hour a day, 1 hour a day for 1 week. I'm not asking you to give me an hour a day for the rest of your life. Just an hour a day this week, this next week could change the trajectory of the rest of your life. Why wouldn't you do it? So I'm going to be here to answer some questions for you and see if there's any other things I can help you with around the challenge. So I've got a bunch of questions here. Let me ask. I feel like I have changed and morphed after 15 years of marriage. My husband says he feels cheated. He has stayed the same, but I have changed. How can I talk to him and let him know that me changing is not a betrayal, but a normal part of growing up? I think you said it really well. Is that, he feels cheated because you haven't grown. He's telling himself a story that we should stay the same. And I think you can just say to him, I don't think that's true. I think we're always I don't want to be the person at 45 that I was at 20. Just like you don't want to be the person at 20 that you were at 2. That would be weird. So I won't be the same person at 60 than I am at 40. And, we see people who are trying to act like they're 20 when they're 40 or 40 when they're 60. And it looks weird. That's not who I want to be. I think God calls us all. And if he's a Christian, I think God calls us to grow through the lifespan. And as we do that, we are going to change. We're going to mature, as we should. So I'm sorry that you feel cheated, that you don't have the same girl who played and partied that I did at 18, but that's not who I am anymore. So where do we go from here? So where do we go from here is really the question, because I'm not going to stop growing because you choose not to. I believe God's calling me to grow. And this is if I could say to every Christian woman who's on this feed right now, this is a huge mistake that so many Christian women have made, is if he's not growing, I shouldn't grow. He doesn't determine your growth. God determines your growth. God determines your growth. As an infant, you're to grow. You learn all by yourself to roll over and sit up and start talking, and you want to walk. And this is driven inside of us. It's planted in our DNA to grow, just like a seed is to break open and become a plant. And a caterpillar, a cucumber, a rose bush, or whatever it's supposed to do, or an acorn is supposed to break open and become an oak tree. That's what you're supposed to do. Dying to self doesn't mean you become no self. You become your full self, right? Your immature self dies and your mature self starts to grow. Just like the caterpillar changes into the butterfly. And I think you can say these things to your husband in a kind way. Hey, I'm curious. All of nature grows. The seed becomes a flower. The caterpillar becomes a butterfly. The baby becomes an adult. The adult becomes a mature adult. Why wouldn't you want that for yourself? I want that for me, and God wants that for us. And then just stop. Those are called curious questions. And when we can ask a curious question of someone who's resistant without shaming them for being resistant, it might open up a little crack inside of them to think about it instead of resisting your question. So I would start there, but I wouldn't stop growing, friend. That's God's call for you to grow and mature. It is God's will that you mature and live a holy life. That's in the scriptures. And so I think you are right spot on doing what God calls you to do. And he is stuck. And you can't unstuck him. All you can do is invite him to get unstuck through some curious questions, but he may not. Okay, so when you can't change your external world, doesn't mean you shouldn't try. When you can't change your external world, that means I have to change myself. Now what? Where do we go from here? Where do I go from here? All right. And you can't change the way he feels. He feels cheated. Just like if I say no to someone and they feel disappointed, I can't change the way they feel. That's their work to do. So if we look at this chart again, here's an external. So if I say no to someone on the external, I can't give you money. No, I'm not going to co-sign the loan. No, I can't, whatever, write a book with you, whatever it might be. And they, in their internal, feel disappointed. I can't fix their internal. That's their work to do, right? That's their work to say, wow, I wonder why I'm so disappointed. I can't let her have her no. Oh, I have a big should, those expectations. She should always say yes to me. If she really loved me, she would say yes. If she really cared, she would say yes. And they have those beliefs. And this is what we're going to talk about next week. We have these beliefs that we have, these negative thoughts and beliefs that life should be the way we want it to be. And when it's not, we're upset internally, not recognizing that life isn't going to be the way we want it to be. People don't always say yes. And so that's their work to do, not yours. All right. Do you have any advice on how to build up my self-worth when it's not tied to being a hero for someone else or how much to get done in one day? Will this challenge help me with this? I think this challenge will help you become more aware of that. I don't know that I'm not going to promise at the end of this, you're going to feel like this problem has all been solved. But I think you'll have some tools to solve it. I think this is a myth that your worth isn't tied to anything that you do, right? I think we live in a culture that productivity, popularity, possessions, and power determine worth, right? So if I'm productive and I get a lot done, if I can have a Coach purse or drive a Mercedes or BMW, if I have power and I'm a CEO or I'm the pastor or I'm the leader or whatever, and if I'm popular, people like me and like my Facebook pages and, think I'm wonderful all the time, whatever, that means I'm worth something. That's a lie. It's a total lie. Our worth isn't determined by any of those things. Our worth is determined by God because he stamped us with his image. It says, in the image of God, we are created. In the image of God, he stamped his dignity upon every human being. So we treat people with dignity. I do, whether they're on the street homeless or whether they're the CEO or whether they're a narcissist or whether they're a criminal. I try to treat them with dignity because God stamped them with dignity. Now, they may be acting undignified. They may be acting in ways that I don't like or approve of, but their dignity is hardwired in their DNA, as is yours. So your worth or your self-worth doesn't come from doing more or having power over someone. That's just feed your ego, right? It just feeds your ego. Look at me, I'm special. I could drive a Mercedes, or I can wear a Louis Vuitton bag, or I'm special. I can, put you down and I'm popular. It's crazy. It's worldly. It's worldly. Our kingdom is not of this world. And so love of power, power of love, two different kingdoms. So in order for you to restore your self-worth, you need to get a download from your Heavenly Father that says, girl, I made you beautiful. I created you with a specific plan in mind, just like that little acorn. You're not to stay an acorn. You're to become a mighty oak tree. Grow, girl. You are beautiful and worth it. And that's where your self-worth comes from. And I shared this story yesterday, I think, or one of the days this week in the Samaritan woman story. It's a perfect story of a woman with low self-esteem, right? Rejected by her husbands, living with a man who's not her husband, who doesn't care enough about her safety to walk her to the well that day because no other woman in town liked her for whatever reason. She was an outcast. She was rejected. She didn't feel good about herself. And she's shocked that a Jewish man would want to talk to her. Like, you're talking to me, a Samaritan woman? And now I'm, had 5 husbands and this one's not my husband. You know everything about me and you still want to talk to me? Who am I? Who am I that you, the Messiah, would talk to me? And as she looked at Jesus and how Jesus was looking at her, she began to see herself differently. And if you read the story in John chapter 4, she begins to have this rather intellectual, theological discussion with him about the prophets and about all that kind of stuff. Jesus said, hey, girl, I'm going to have a conversation with you because you're smart, you're intuitive, and actually you're going to be the next evangelist, my first evangelist. I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm the Messiah. And she did, because he saw her as she really was. She didn't see herself as she really was. She saw herself as other people defined her, or as she defined herself. So I would say your self-worth needs a download from your Heavenly Father. And so I would just encourage you to spend some time in prayer. And I would say, look at Jesus and see who he is. Like the Samaritan woman did. Who are you? A Jew? Are you a prophet? You're the Messiah? Look at Jesus and notice how he's looking at you. He's not looking at you with disgust, or you're not good enough, or what's wrong with you. He's looking at you like, you're my child. I made you. You're beautiful. I can't wait to see what becomes of you if you listen to me, because I made you for amazing purposes. And it doesn't mean powerful purposes in this world, but if the power of love is there, then God's love helps us to love. And that's all that matters, God says. So I would encourage you to take this class because I think it'll help you feel more confident about your abilities to handle some things. But your worth isn't dependent on your ability to handle things. Your worth is stamped in gold, right in your DNA by your Heavenly Father. All right. The hardest is dealing with family, with my elderly father and siblings wanting to make decisions that are really not the best interest of my father and trying to do it and say it in a way that I'm not attacked back as they come against honoring my parents. How do I deal with this? Yeah, I have that too. I don't have the conflict, but I have an elderly dad now. My mom died last summer, and my father is pretty stubborn and strong, and he doesn't want people telling him what to do. And he's got 6 kids who all think we know better than he does about how he should manage his life. So I can understand a little bit of the tension. And so I think here's where success isn't the benchmark. All right. So we always, again, in our American culture, success, that's why this fear of failure that we're going to be talking about in our Moving Beyond Challenge is so important, because success is, oh, I did it right. And failure is, I did it wrong. But that's not necessarily true. All right. Success is doing what God calls you to do, regardless of the outcome. That's the true definition of success, because we would see Jesus as a failure. We would see that cross as a mistake. Like, why did you let that happen? If we looked at it, success is accomplishment and failure is non-accomplishment, right? And so success is, I'm going to do what God calls me to do. So God's calling me to honor my parents. What does that look like in this instance? And I can't control my siblings. I can't control their expectations. I can't change their minds. That's not my job. All I can do is show up in a way that makes me feel good about the way I honored my dad and showed up for him and showed up for my siblings. And I can't make them see it my way. And so I'm not going to put that on myself. I can share my point of view. They can share their point of view. I can listen respectfully. I can say I disagree. And I can't control the total outcome. And I think if you can get to that mindset, which is what we're going to be talking, how do I get rid of the negative thoughts or the unrealistic expectations that somehow I should be able to convince everybody to do it my way, or I should be able to, turn everybody's heart toward, honoring their day. That's not your power to do. So if you can be more realistic about what kind of family you have and the dynamics you have and who does what, and you just show up doing the next right thing, you can have success in God's eyes. So it's not about success in your agenda. It's success in, did I follow God's plan? So I'll give you a couple examples of this. Esther, when she was in the, the queen, Mordecai said, you got to go talk to him. It's like, if I go talk to him, I'm not allowed to go talk to him. If I go talk to him, he could chop my head off. That sepulcher, boom, you're not allowed here without permission. And so she took a risk. I'm going to do the next right thing. I don't know if it will be successful. I don't know if he'll see me. She didn't think, oh, I have to have success. She just said, my job is to do the next right thing. Right. And even when she invited her king's, the husband of Haman to dinner, and she kind of sensed intuitively, this isn't the best time to talk to him. Can you come again tomorrow? I'm doing the next right thing. I don't know if it's going to turn out. I don't even if I'll come to dinner. She doesn't know that. Miriam and Moses' mother, they put the baby in the water. They didn't know the outcome. They just knew not to kill the baby because Pharaoh had ordered all the babies killed, right? All the baby boys killed because the population was getting too big. They just put them in the water. They did the next right thing. And the outcome was up to God, right? Ruth, when she decided to go with Naomi, her mother-in-law, she was supposed to go back to her people. And she said, no, I think I'm going to go here. She made a decision, the power of choice. She didn't know if it was going to be a good choice or a bad choice. She didn't know that. She just made a choice, and she made one. No, I'm not going back here. I'm going here. Esther made a choice. Miriam made a choice. Moses' mother made a choice. The Hebrew midwives made a choice. We're not listening to Pharaoh. We might get killed to do that. We're going to make the next right choice. Right? That's our work to do internally. So your work is to listen to God and make the next right choice and show up in the way that God calls you to. Stephen did that and he got stoned. Right? Did he do something wrong? No. He was in the right place at the right time, but the outcome looks like failure to us, but not to God, right? Jeremiah did his work, preached, to the people, and they threw him in the pit. So God gave you some good outcomes, but they're not always good. So we can't say, oh, how do I do this so that my external world will change, especially when you're talking about multiple different people. This is so, so important. So I just worked with a client who his father died, and she had a lot of, so the same similar situation, and she had a lot of family drama and all kinds of stuff. And so we were coaching together, and she said, I don't know how to handle all this, and it's going to be horrible and all this. I said, all right, let's stop. Let's get your why. Why is it important for you to show up to your father's funeral in the way that you want to show up? Right? It's not important for you to manage the rest of the family. Why is it important for you to show up the way you want to show up? Now, how can we do that? That's the how. But once you got your why down, then you can, why is it important for me to honor my dad, and how am I going to do that? All right. It's not important for you to fix all your family or change all their dynamics or all of that. Your dad has a voice. They all have voices too. And the power of choice extends to everybody, not just you. And so we have to give people the freedom to say no to us, even if we think it's the wrong choice. Just like God gives human beings the freedom to say no to him, even though we know that's the wrong choice. He gives them that choice. And we have to give the other people the choice. Your husband to say no to you, your children to say no to you at times, especially as they get older, and your siblings to say, no, we don't agree. We don't want to do it your way. And how are you going to be when they do that externally? How are you going to grow into the person you need to be to handle their no? See, when we talk about people pleasing, we're talking about them handling your no, but we also need to learn how to handle other people's no. No, I'm not going to do it your way. I don't like your way. How do you need to grow to handle that? Is your work to do right now. And would love to help you next week if you join the challenge. All right. Can we sign up for the Moving Beyond again? I took it last year. It would be good to revisit it. Absolutely. Absolutely. I've changed this year, so I'm going to teach some different things. Even though the topics are the same, the lessons are different. Right? I'm guilty of codependency. How do you start getting your own plans in life? It is very overwhelming for me and very fearful of being without their needs. Yep. So I would encourage you very much to sign up for the challenge, because you do need to get your own life. You're not meant to stay a seed and keep watering everybody else, right? That's not your job. Your job, you can water people, but your job is to become who you're to become. And you've defaulted to creating an identity that's false. And your identity is the hero of someone else's story instead of being the hero of your own story. You have no story of your own other than how I help everybody else. And codependency, the best definition I've ever read of codependency is by Gary Kellogg, because it's kind of a wishy-washy term. But the best definition is by Terry Kellogg, and he says codependency is an absence of a relationship with yourself. An absence. So you don't know yourself. You don't know what you like. You don't know what you dislike. You don't know what you want. You don't know what you need. You don't know who you are. You don't know what your values are. You don't know what you're supposed to grow into. That's your work to do instead of fixing everybody else's life. Okay. What do you do with ungrateful grandchildren? Or is it their parents who do not think people? Well, you don't do anything with ungrateful grandchildren other than love them, right? So here's your external world. These are your ungrateful grandchildren. So you feel angry, hurt, resentful that you do things for them and they're not grateful. Okay. So here's where I think you need some work to do. One is, are you doing things for them so that they give you something back? So I'm going to pay for their college education so that they're grateful back. I'm going to have them over for a 4th of July so that they think I'm a wonderful grandmother. Well, then it's kind of, in some ways, somewhat a relationship in which you're having expectations. Are they realistic? I don't know how old your grandchildren are. So you have two choices here. One is, how do you do your own work so that you give what you want to give without expecting anything in return? See, when we're people pleasers, we expect something in return. So if I give you a yes and I give you money, or I do something for you, or if I'm generous to you, I better get your appreciation. I better get your gratitude. I better get, oh my gosh, you're so helpful. Thank you. You're wonderful. I couldn't have done it without you. And that feeds something in us that maybe shouldn't be fed so much, right? So we're people pleasing, not just because we're afraid. We're people pleasing because we're getting something we want. We're getting their gratitude. We're getting their appreciation. We're getting their praise. We're getting a relationship. We're getting their company, right? It's an unhealthy dynamic, but we're getting something. I'm not saying that children shouldn't learn to be grateful. Is that your job as a grandparent to teach them? Could be. So it might be, when you work on your own resentment first, that you ask them a curious question and to say, I'm wondering, I never hear back after I send a birthday gift. It would really mean a lot to me if I knew you liked it or you didn't like it or that you got it, right? But if you're expecting that, then perhaps your love has ties to it or your generosity has ties to it. And I've learned, for me, I just want to be a loving person and I want to be a generous person. And that's what I want to be. And if other people don't appreciate it as much as I want them to, that doesn't change who I want to be, right? And so you have to decide that. You're not going to change your grandkids. You can invite them to look at that if you can do it in a non-shaming, condemning way. But it's really their parents' job to teach them values. And if gratitude isn't one of the values that they've been taught, then it might be something that, at a good time, that might be non-shaming, asking a curious question. But I sense there's some internal work that needs to be done as well for you. All right. Do you have any advice for over-functioning in a marriage where the other partner has ADHD? Well, this challenge helped me with this issue. It'll help you stop over-functioning. It won't help his ADHD. All right. So you can do your work. You can't do his work. Right. So part of you has to be willing to fail at fixing him. So our challenge on how do I get over the fear of failure? So you're still trying to make everything work for him because he's not willing to do the work for his own life. There's plenty of people with ADHD who take responsibility for that and do their work so that they don't drop the ball on their spouse or on their life, right? ADHD has more challenges. Just like if I had one leg, I would have more challenges, right? And I might not be able to do certain things, and then I could ask for help, or I could do other things or arrange my life so I didn't have to, do jogging or run or whatever I couldn't do. But even people who have one leg jog and run. They do it in the Olympics. They get a prosthesis. So I think sometimes people who have a disability, we give them a pass on responsibility. And we think that it's our job to cover for their disability, when in fact it's their job to understand their disability and then decide what they want to do. So if I have a disability and my leg is cut off and I want to run or I want to ski, I better learn how to use that prosthesis, right? No one else can do that for me but me. Or I can choose to just sit on the couch and have everybody bring food to me and cater for me. But that's not really helping me grow. And one of the things we talk about a lot in my ministry, because we work a lot with marriages and dysfunctional spouses, is that you're enabling someone to stay immature by over-functioning. You're enabling him to stay crippled. And I'll never forget back in the day when I was just a brand new counselor, so it was a long time, 40 years ago, I heard a speaker, and I can't remember his name, but he had no arms. He was born with no arms, just little nubs here. So it wasn't Nick, the guy with short leg, just feet and no arms and legs, but he just had no arms. And he was like the sixth boy of a family. And his whole family catered to him. Like, oh my gosh, he had no arms. We have to feed him. We have to bathe him. We have to button his shirt. And he started turning into a really entitled young man at around 10. And his mother finally said, "You're on your own, kid. What you learn to do with your feet is your job. But if you want to eat, you're going to have to learn to feed yourself with your feet. If you want to drive, you're going to have to learn to drive with your feet. If you want to take a shower, you're going to have to learn to wash yourself with your feet." And, she exercised tough love for him. And he was here as a speaker, and he's in his 20s. And he said, it was the best thing my mom ever did. I hated her for it. I hated her because she rocked my world by not taking care of me anymore. But I am so glad she did, because I feel like a man who can take care of himself. Right? And so our kindness towards someone with a disability can actually cripple them more. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be kind and compassionate. But if you're over functioning to cover for your husband so he can just be irresponsible with his ADHD, then you're not helping him, and you're certainly not helping you or your family. So I would encourage you to have a come to Jesus moment with your husband and saying, there are things you can do for ADHD. I expect you to go get some help so that you're not dropping the ball all the time with these things, and see if he does. Now, if he doesn't, then you decide how you're going to handle that, right? Just like if a husband has an addiction to alcohol or porn or whatever, you say, hey, I can't fix that for you, but it's impacting our family. So I would like you to get help. And if they don't want to, and they just expect you to overfunction and cover for all that, you have to decide internally, is that what God's asking me to do? Or is that just enabling the dysfunction to continue? And I can't make that decision for you, but that's the power of choice. You do have a choice. You do have a choice. All right. It's so helpful to realize my own disappointment when someone says no to me. Doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me or they don't love me. I can respect their no as well and not punish them in some way for my own disappointment to their no. This was the pattern in my family of origin. Will this help me keep breaking those patterns? I am so glad you shared that, because yes, it will help you break those patterns, because we have some unrealistic expectations right? Just like we have unrealistic beliefs, like life should be easy, life should be fair. We have unrealistic expectations, and we'll talk about that on Thursday in the challenge, that if someone really cares about me, they will say yes when I ask them to do something. And if they say no, that means I'm not that important to them, or they don't really care. And that may not mean that at all. But if that's what you believe, you're going to get your feelings hurt a lot, darling, right? Because if someone has to always do what you want to show you their love, you've tied them in a knot, like, and their power to choose is gone. And so for you to be able to understand that, of course, people have to say no sometimes. I say no to my adult children a lot. No, I can't take the kids for the weekend. It doesn't mean I don't love you or don't love your kids, but I'm busy doing some work stuff that I have to do, and I can't take the kids kayaking right now, right? Or whatever it is. And, and so I think these are really important, deeply held beliefs that then we have some negative thoughts about. So the belief is, if you really love me, of course you would help me when I want you to. And then when they don't, then we have these negative thoughts like, oh, I don't have the kind of relationship with them that I thought I did. Oh, I'm not important to them. Oh, I don't matter. Oh, they don't really care. Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with, this hurts so bad. But because of these negative thoughts that we don't even stop and say, wait a minute, brain, what are you thinking? That's not even true. Because we've never learned to take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. Who does that for you if you don't? Your mother's not going to do that unless you're a toddler and says, that's not true. You're not stupid, right? When a little toddler says, I'm so stupid, I don't know this, I don't know how to do it. She's going, you're not stupid, you're just little. You don't know how to do this yet. You don't know how to tie your shoe at 3. Your brother can tie your shoe at 5, but at 3 years old, you don't know how to tie your shoe. You don't have the coordination to it. A mother corrects their child's thoughts when they start blaming themselves for everything, right? A good mother would. It's not true you don't have any friends. Just because Jimmy doesn't want to come to your birthday party doesn't mean you don't have any friends, right? But kids, we all personalize things and self-reference. If somebody doesn't want to do what we want to do, oh, I'm not liked, I'm not popular, nobody likes it. That's not true. That's not true. So if our mothers did that for us, then we should have that internal mother inside that says, that's not true, that's not true. But many of us didn't have those kind of parents who helped us to learn to think truthfully. But ultimately, God is our parent, and he tells us, I have no greater joy than to see my children walking in the truth. The truth will set you free. Quit believing these lies. But we don't even know we believe. They just feel so true. Like, I'm worthless. I'm not worth as much as somebody else. Nobody likes me. We just believe them, and it colors our world. And so we're going to talk about that this week, more in depth. So please sign up and invite your friends to sign up. You can share this link and say, hey, come back and watch this Facebook Live. They're all recorded here. Watch this Facebook Live, or watch yesterday's. It was pretty amazing with the internal, external with Susan. So watch them and say, I'm going to do this challenge next week. You want to do it with me? It'd be really fun to do it together. And let's get off stuck and begin to move into our power to choose. All right, we've got one more question, and then we're going to close. My son was extremely disrespectful to me in front of his wife and children. Do I accept an invitation to his home even though he has not apologized to me? How do I deal with this? Okay, so I would ask you to ask a couple of questions of yourself. What led to that? So did it just come out of the blue, or was there something that you were doing that he had asked you to stop doing before, or had given you a couple warnings that was bugging him? So I think everything has a context. It doesn't just come out of the blue that someone's disrespectful to you usually. So I think you have to ask yourself, what was the context? Doesn't make it right, but we want to know the context. So if there's anything about the context that you could own, I would start there. So I'll give you an example, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it's been true for me with my adult children, okay? So I might be a little bit of the sage in wanting to give all my children advice, because that's what I do. That's what I do. That's what I'm good at, right? I'm here giving advice, right? So I might be a little bit intrusive in telling my children what I think is the best decision for their life, which they do not like. I bet your son doesn't like it either, especially male children find it very offensive when their mother is telling them, in essence, I don't trust that you can manage your life. Let me tell you what to do. So I wonder if there was a little bit of that going on. Not that you didn't mean well, but that there was an arching of a back and a disrespect to say, but off, stop it, mom. And ask yourself, were there any softer boundaries before that? Like, Mom, stop telling me what to do, or I don't need your advice, or don't interfere with the children, or whatever it was. Were there some boundaries that were given to you ahead of time that you were ignoring because you had such good advice to give? So that would be my story that I would tell myself, that what was the context? Because there might be a context. And if there is, how could you own that first? So here's how I would do it. If there was a context, I would say, thanks so much for the invitation. I really would love to come, but I think I want to clear up the air about what happened last time I was there. I think I overstepped my boundaries by telling you that I disagreed with how you were handling your children, or overstepped my boundaries on how you should cook your dinner, or overstepped my boundaries on how you should handle your money, or whatever it was. If there was a context, I think I overstepped my boundaries, and you kind of reacted like a papa bear and bit my head off. And I certainly didn't like that either. And I'm wondering if we can talk about that so that doesn't happen again, because I certainly don't mean to step on your toes, and I didn't like the way I felt when I left the house. So it's not like you're saying it was okay for you to bite my head off, but if there was a context, I would own the first part of it and see if he can own the second part of it. If there was no context at all, you were just minding your own business, and he came up to you and started disrespecting you, I might say, thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it. I'd love to come, but I'm a little bit gun shy because of last time. And, something happened where you kind of just unleashed a lot of anger toward me, and I'm not sure why, because I don't see that I did anything to warrant being treated in such a demeaning, disrespectful way. Could you explain that to me? So that would be if there was no context. All right. So I would definitely have a conversation first. I would sandwich the conversation. If you want to, I want to come. Thank you for the invitation. But there's a little bit of unfinished business that I would like to talk about before I come, so that it's a good visit for both of us. All right. But I would do the soul searching first to see if there was anything that you might have crossed a boundary that he felt like he needed to bite you back. And I'm not saying he should have, but maybe you were ignoring the soft no. And this is going to be, we're going to be talking a lot about this next Friday when we talk about moving beyond people pleasing, because sometimes we try to give a soft no, like, oh no, I can't lend you money, or no, I can't babysit your kids, or, or, oh, I don't think so. Let me pray about it. And then you pray about it and come back and say, oh, that won't work for me. And they're like, oh, come on. You know how much I need you. And they don't take your soft no. Like, they just continue to bombard you with requests. And then what happens is either you give in, okay, or you go, stop it, and we lose our temper, right? And so then we feel horrible, especially women. Men don't feel as horrible, but women feel horrible when we say the wrong thing in a tone. And we usually go back then and do what they want because we feel guilty. So we want to learn how to navigate all that in a good way, in a healthy way, so you can still have your no. And when someone is challenging your no, what do you do? What do you do when the manipulator is challenging you to back down from your no? So what do you do is that you can show up in a way that feels good for you and let them know we're not having this discussion anymore. All right. So those are the end of the questions. I hope you are coming to the challenge. We really would love to see you next week. We do this once a year, and it's always gotten great reviews. It's a great jumpstart for you. If you're currently in counseling or coaching this week, if you attend and you do the work, we'll save you probably 6 months of counseling for $17 and 5 hours of your time. It's really it's a good value. Really, it is. So I hope that you come, that you engage, and we're going to have prizes for people who engage. So you want to see what they are. We want you to be engaged because we firmly believe in the wisdom of the collective. So it's not just a complaining session. No, I tried this and it didn't work, but I tried this and this is what happened. And this is what progress I made, or this is where I got stuck, right? Because we want you to be accountable for what you're doing and then get the support that you need. And nobody knows what support you need unless you share. And if something worked really well, everybody else wants to know that because they want to try it. And so this collective wisdom of the group, imagine a room full of 300 women or 500 women, and we're all sharing what worked. And you can copy that down, or you can look at the recording later and see what worked for people and say, wow, I never even thought of that. Even the coaches didn't even think about that, and that worked. So these are going to be really helpful tips. When do we get together as women in church lately at all, let alone honestly, and really talk about these things that we all struggle with and get real and honest and deep with some answers that aren't just biblical, just pray about it kind of stuff, but really answers that are biblically sound, but also psychologically sound that will help us move forward in our growth as women, as people, as children of God. So I hope to see you next week. It's lesliebernick.com/challenge. And I challenge you to join and be a part. I think you won't regret it at all. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.